So the title of the exhibition is Cursebreakers, and it refers to the local legend around Hastings that Aleister Crowley put a curse on the town when he died here. And the only way to break the curse is to have a pebble from the beach, and it has to have a hole in. And as long as you carry it around in your pocket, that is a way to break the curse. Hastings is really important to me because I used to live here. I moved here when I was 18. I studied foundation art at Sussex Coast College, which is where I met Ben and Billy, who are 2 out of 3 members of Flatland Projects, which this show was originally supposed to be at in May 2020. But due to COVID, that couldn't happen. So I got the news in September 2020 that we were actually going to do Cursebreakers at the Delaware as a co-commission between Flatland and the Delaware. So my practice has always been really interested in folklore, myth, legend, different archetypes of women throughout history. And I think Hastings is a really good breeding ground for gathering these stories. Things like Jack in the Green, which is a festival every year in May to welcome in the summer, is a really important event in the town. And legends like Crowley's Curse, which the exhibition is based on, also give this sort of witchy, magic feel to the town. So the main triptych that is in the middle of the space, each piece has a different theme behind it. So the first triptych is about a relationship. It's 2 people. It's about balance between 2 people. The second triptych, the middle piece, is about community groups and sort of maybe a mob mentality, sisterhood, camaraderie, everything that you can find within a group. In this work, we've got the 3 Catholic saints, St. Margaret, St. Mary of Egypt, and St. Lucia. And I try to retell their stories in my own way. I grew up Catholic as well, so these stories were part of my childhood. The story of St. Margaret is the main image, and in her story she was swallowed whole by the devil in the form of a dragon, and due to her wearing a silver cross, she was able to burst through the belly of the beast completely whole and unscathed. And I really like this idea of breaking through things, breaking through oppressive structures, which links back to the idea of breaking through Crowley's curse. So St. Lucia is a character that appears in a couple of the works. She is a Catholic saint who is the patron saint of blindness, and she's always depicted, not always, but mostly depicted holding her eyes on a plate. And for me, this image is really powerful. It sort of reminds me of offering up your vision, your perspective, and as an artist, I feel that's really important, or sharing your perspective with others. So I use a few different ways of making in my practice. I use a lot of linocut printing. The ones that are in the show are mostly reduction prints, which mean that there's lots of different colours layered on top of one another. And they take a lot of time because each layer of colour needs to dry over a day, and then the next colour can be printed. So you can sort of work out how long they've been made by counting the colours. I started making the mosaics through lockdown. They were initially inspired by a trip that I did to Rome. I went to the Vatican and saw all these really intricate images made with mosaics. So often with the linocuts, there will be a lot of detail and symbolism and narrative wrapped up in the design, in the drawing. But with the mosaics, it's really difficult to do that because the tiles don't really allow for subtleties in the design. So I sort of have to think more about motifs in the images, thinking about how to sort of boil down exactly what I want it to look like. It's also a really meditative process. I find that putting the tiles together is almost like a puzzle, and cutting them to fit in the exact spot can be really satisfying. As well as linocuts and mosaics in the show, there's one piece that's an embroidery, and it's really important to the narrative of the show. The only way to break Crowley's curse is to have a stone with a hole in it and carry it around in your pocket. So the embroidery piece is Ace of Pebble, which is inspired by the aces of tarot cards. When you have an ace in tarot, it's the raw energy of the suit. So it's almost like a seed, it has potential. And with the Ace of Pebble, it's a hand coming out from the clouds, almost like an offering from the universe to sort of take this Cursebreaker and use it. So there's one linocut in the show called Who Do We Tell When the Bees Are Dead? It's a monochrome linocut, so it's not a reduction, it's just plain blue colour. It's also a triptych, and the title refers to a custom, an old European custom called telling the bees. And the idea is that when a big event would happen in the family, often a death, you would go and whisper the news to the bees, because the bees were sort of seen as almost these magical creatures that were a buffer between the two worlds of ours and the next. In the triptych, the first panel is sort of about life and innocence, nature. It's very luscious. There's a tree, there's a river that runs all the way through. And there's two young girls sort of watching a funeral procession of a bee as it goes down the river. The second panel is death. So the first one was life, the second one is death. It shows the river has been polluted. There's a woman who is calling out to the bees. She's telling a swarm of bees about a death of some sort. And then as the river flows into the third panel, that is the sort of rebirth and regeneration. You see a community building a hive or building a community, a group of people working together, planting seeds, building a home. There is also, you can see a bee on the lip of a baby in the third panel, which was also another sort of bee-connected folklore. If a bee landed on a baby's lip when it was born, it was said to become a poet or a prophet when it was older.